end of life in Thailand. Just a couple of things. There's a lot of information today, so we want to get started right on time. There may be some people coming in a little bit late, so we just have to excuse that interruption. We also, Lifelong Learning would invite you up to two things. One is tomorrow we're having an open house between 1 and 3. We'd love to see you there to see our center. This is not our usual spot, but it's just 5 minutes of a walk from here. You can see our space, offer suggestions for classes, etc. We'd love to have you. And also, if you have not already signed up to be on our mailing list, please, we'd love you to do that, and hopefully we can see you again for other excursions, classes, etc. So without further ado, welcome to session 3.
Thank you, Colleen. All right, like I said, we have a jam-packed day today, so we're going to try to move real quickly. Couple announcements. We sent out handouts from each of the first two sessions, I think a week ago today. If you did not get one at the email address you used to sign up, if you signed up through PALLIATIve, please contact them. If you signed up through Expats Club, contact me or Dave or the media at chiangmaiexpatsclub.com, and we'll make sure that you get one. Last week, I just asked people, would you be interested in a 5th free bonus session? And I was absolutely amazed and thrilled with the response. A lot of people said yes. So at the time, I mentioned I had no idea if the room was available and what the deal was. We checked the following week, which would have been, I don't know, the 4th or something of March or whatever it is. And this room is not available. So we circled back with the folks at PIAP, and it turns out this room is available from noon to 1:30 next week after the 4th session. So here's what we're going to do. Number one, I know this is the first thing you're going to think about. We are going to feed you. So if you come to that session, you're going to get a sandwich and some chips and a water and maybe even a cookie if you're nice. So the only thing that I would ask is we're putting a sign-up sheet on the table where you registered this morning, and we'd just like to have some idea of a count of the number of people, so I know how many sandwiches and chips and cookies to get. So if you would kindly, and again, it's free, we're not going to come chase you down if you don't show up, but it would be nice if you signed up, and it would be nice if you sign up if you then show up. So that's about it there. Keep this in mind as we go through today. I see a question in the back already. Yes, sir?
Can you just repeat the date of the 5th session?
Oh, yeah.
And the time?
All right. Next week, 27 February, the regular session is 10:30 to noon. What we're going to do is we're going to get out early at 11:30, and then at noon we're going to reconvene, and during that 11:30 to noon will be where the sandwiches and stuff are. And then from noon to 1:30 next week, 27 February, we will do the 5th bonus session. Yes?
For session number 5, has the agenda been set yet?
It's strictly Q&A. It's all your questions. It's all driven by you guys. All right? And my only suggestion is don't have the first question be about the family tree, or we'll never get another question. So, teasing, we will figure out this family tree, I promise. All right, again, we've got a lot of stuff to cover today. So I'm going to, today's session is 2 things: end-of-life healthcare, and then also we're going to talk about living wills. The first speaker today is, and I'm delighted to have Heather Smith with us with the McCain Senior Center. If you're not familiar with them, I've encouraged her to give a little advertisement about the center. And come on up. Give a nice warm welcome to
Good morning. In about the year 1999, McCain Center was looking at what we should be doing, what were the social needs in Chiang Mai that were going to be coming up in the future. And we determined that aging was the coming problem which our society wasn't yet prepared for. There was a presumption everyone would live with their family in the family home. But we also recognise that Chiang Mai is a retirement centre and there are a lot of people who don't have a family home here. And so McCain became a multi-tiered aged care centre, and in 2008 we opened Dok Gao Gardens.
Into the microphone.
Thank you. Since then, this morning, we looked at our register and we figure we've had 450 people come through Dok Gao Gardens and live with us there. And it must be at least double that number who've come through McCain Hospital or whom we've interviewed with a view to helping them at home or possibly them coming to us. So anything I say this morning is not based on a university degree. It's based on nearly 20 years of working with elderly folk, largely expats. So palliative care and hospice care was the title, and people tend to think that the two are the same. In actual fact, they are different. But both are not expecting to cure the disease. They're aiming to provide support for end of life and looking not just at the physical aspects of the disease, but at all the things that go along with it. So it's end-of-life care when illness is no longer responding to treatment, and you're trying to alleviate the symptoms, the pain, provide overall comfort, and assist people to die with dignity. And the benefits obviously are all those things being achieved, as well as helping people to make decisions and helping their family and their caregivers and their friends, because someone dying has an effect on the people around them also, and often those people are left very alone. But hospice care is about end times. Palliative care is different. You're living with the effects of these different diseases, cancer, strokes, and we all know the effects of a stroke and how that changes your life. Dementia, Alzheimer's, chronic lung problems, long-term permanent injury, Parkinson's disease, and others. But especially dementia, strokes are things that come upon people that they're not prepared for and they need a lot of help with. So palliative care is when life is not ending because of the disease. Death's not imminent and you have to live with what's happening. But the quality of life is decreased. You're living with the issues for a longer time. And the former way of life, the way you all live now, may become impossible. So anyone with these problems needs to have to work through denial. It won't matter, it won't change, I won't go that way. To living with change, to understanding the process of the disease. And these mean usually increased dependency. You're going to need people and aids, long-term support. Where is that going to come from? People become more vulnerable because they can't remember things, because they can't go to the bank themselves, because they have to trust other people to do things for them. Memory loss is something that's terrible to deal with. Some of it, I guess many of us reckon we're going that way already. But what if you can't remember your password? Oh, can't remember it already. Your bank access. Almost everything we do these days requires memory. What's going to happen if we don't have that memory? How are we going to stay connected? Be in touch with our pension? People write a letter, the British pension company write a letter every year to say, are you still alive? But if you've moved and moved again, how often does the mail follow you? And so you don't answer, so eventually they presume not alive, and you know when your pension stops coming, but you don't know why your pension stopped coming. And the people helping you get the money out don't know why the pension stopped coming. Who's going to deal with that problem, work out where it is, how it will happen? The problems with age can also lead to social dislocation. Because you're not quite the person you were, and you can't remember necessarily where all your friends live, maybe your friendships drop off a little bit. Maybe you're becoming more depressed. Maybe you have some speech impairment and talking to people is more difficult, or people can't understand you. And then a big problem often comes up down the way with behavioural change. You change the way you react to people, the way you speak. People can get very angry. People can start swearing in ways they've never sworn in their life before. Or they can lose social boundaries and maybe touch people inappropriately. So there's lots of things in the progress of disease that mean we are very vulnerable and we need help more than we have available at home. Are professional services available in Chiang Mai for hospice and palliative care? We know that there are good medical treatment options around. Increasingly, there are more and more nursing homes, often run by a doctor and nurse combination, with good bed care, high care, not necessarily extremely expensive. And these may be possible supports for you if you need medical hospice care. But palliative care and hospice care are developing services in Thailand. There are more training courses being offered for nurses. The research studies all put Thailand into category 3A, patchy. And who knows which patch you are in. There is some palliative care offered through the tertiary hospitals. For example, Suandorp has a palliative care unit, which is mainly advisors and nurses advising you on what you need to think about. Private hospitals, I know Bangkok Hospital has a palliative care department. And again, it's mainly advice and telling you what to do, not a place where you can go, or not necessarily providing people to work with you. They may not. Are there palliative care centres? If you look up on the web page, as I did, they offered me 2 in Thailand. One was Gun Palliative Centre in Bangkok, and the other was where I work, McCain Centre and Dokgao Gardens, which offer both hospice and palliative care in 2 venues. A lot of people say, okay, my health is deteriorating, but I would like to stay at home. Can you have this sort of care at home? Possibly. Would your doctor support the option of palliative care for your problem in your own home? If it needs morphine or drugs to alleviate pain, possibly not, unless the doctor is in charge of the nurses giving it. Is care at home safe for you? Well, have a look at your condo, have a look at your home, have a look at the access to it. Is it viable in your home setting? Do the people who live with you, can they cope with looking after you? People often say, oh, it's not a problem. My wife, my friends can look after me, but really? And would your landlord approve of you staying in that place if you need a lot of care? There are some groups of nurses who've formed small groups to provide palliative care and hospice care here in Chiang Mai. And there are some experienced caregivers who are looking after people at home. So these are options. But the problem is, everyone is different. There is no one size fits all. There is no one type of palliative care and home care that works for everyone. So give up. Let's go for assisted suicide. Assisted suicide is illegal in Thailand, so no one is allowed to help you do that. One solution? No. So what do we need to do to be prepared? Most important, avoid unrealistic expectations. I can't tell you the number of people coming through Doc Gao who've said, well, I don't need to be here, my friends will take care of me. And behind him stands a friend going, or my condo staff will look after me. The girl from downstairs gets my medicines and gets my food and goes to the bank for me. The condo will help me. And we've already had a phone call from the condos saying, this person's coming to see you and thinks we will look after him. Folk back home hear about the problem and they know it's not a problem because your consulate will look after you. I didn't say it. The consulate has its specifics of what it's allowed to do, and it doesn't include caring for every individual personally. My family can look after me. The number of people whose well spouse has been dragged down by trying to look after the spouse they love but who needs constant care is unreal. Or a young Thai wife or a young Thai friend, can they provide all the types of care that you need? Very dubious. A charity will help me. Please let me know when you find that charity. I really want to meet them. So how can you help yourself to be better prepared? You are the only one who can really identify your own potential needs. What's the history of disease in your family? What are you already noticing might become a problem for you? What are your current health issues which may, if they increase, mean you become very vulnerable? A good realistic look at your own history, your own life and expectations is a wonderful way to start being prepared for the next part of living. When you've identified the areas where you may need help, think about the things that help will be comprised of. What is it that you're going to want people to do for you? What sort of help do you need? What sort of people do they need to be? If you need pain alleviation, then nurses caring for you may be fine. But nurses coming in to look after you at home may not be about to go shopping for you, go to the bank, go to immigration. A good starting point is also to talk to your medical specialist about, if my health goes down, do you have a referral system for palliative care? They may know a system that's going to work for your type of problem. It's good to constantly update your awareness of what palliative care is available. I showed you from the web search what it says today, but this is a developing and changing aspect of care in Thailand, and there may be more options coming up, so keep up with what's available. But the big one, review your own financial preparations for higher care needs. It won't be as cheap unless you're living a high-style life today. When you need high care will never be as cheap as the way you're living today. Can you afford high care? Hiring caregivers. Okay, what's it cost? I got an update this morning, an untrained caregiver may be charging 650 baht for a day shift or 800 baht for a day shift. If you need someone 24 hours, that's 800 by 3 a day. Can you go to a care centre? What are the care centres' costs? Well, there aren't many, and ours maybe starts at 34,000 baht a month, but that includes all your food and all your laundry and all your care. It doesn't include going to physical therapy or the medications you bring in. High care, more like 46,000 total. That's a ballpark figure for what we're doing, and there aren't many other campers out there at the moment to offer something better. The other need is to review your financial ability to cover emergency ICU. I met a friend recently, because I was called in to help, who had heart surgery and then was in ICU for 2 days, and his daughter is dealing with an 850,000 baht bill. That's huge. What are the options for you? What hospitals can you not afford to go to? If you can't afford that one, then whoever's close to you needs to know which hospital you choose to go to for ICU care, because there will be a difference in costs. Having some emergency funds for the unexpected is a way you can prepare for your own well-being. But also you need to arrange how trustworthy other people can access them, because probably if you're in ICU, you're not in the best state for remembering passwords or knowing exactly where you last put your bank card. Preparing in advance for the unexpected, which hopefully will never happen, but in the years I've been involved here, 1,000 people have come within my orbit, so it does happen. There is a real need to talk to the people closest to you about your wishes in advance and to come to a mutual understanding. They really need to know what you want. So the next session on advance directives is very important. But so is talking to people. Must you pay for hospitalisation in Thailand? Sorry, yes. In an emergency situation, you may be thrown into put into an ambulance and taken to a hospital. Oh, it's a farang. Let's take him to the most expensive private hospital we can think of. You will pay. With emergency admission, the hospital's obliged to take you in, but after 72 hours, they'll be looking to transfer you or to give you a payment agreement that you are going to sign that says you are willing to pay 60,000 baht a day in ICU or whatever the cost will be. So recognising the potential is such an important part of all of this. And if you have gone into emergency and then you're coming out and need to be transferred for respite care, recovery care, where do you want to go? Who knows? You need some friends, some instructions, some advance directives. If you look at all of this and faint, when you revive, think about, should you plan a timely return to your home country where you have rights and services, perhaps free, in healthcare, while you can still travel independently, choose where you want to go, and get the venue set up for yourself. The consulates usually will help in necessity to arrange medical repatriation. You will pay, and medical repatriation means you've got probably a doctor travelling with you and you may be lying out across 3 seats. That's quite expensive stuff. And you won't be able to choose where you go to, probably. Someone else will do that. So what can you do now? You don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully none of this will apply to you. But in case the difficult things happen, there are things you need to do to be better prepared. Establish your own reasonable expectations in your own living situation. Look around your condo, look around the surroundings, look around your house. Is this something you can live in for the rest of your life with safety? What about your neighbourhood? Could you have a neighbourhood agreement? Now I've suggested here a condo care agreement, so you don't suddenly have people going, no. Talk together in your condo about what you would reasonably be willing to do for each other. And usually people agree that in an emergency, you have a fall, you break a leg, people are willing to come on board to help you. For how long? What are they willing to do? What are the boundaries to the help that the people next door will give? And you can help establish that yourself, what you would receive and what you would give in a neighbourly way. But it enables you to say later to somebody, no, that's outside what we ever agreed. You need to make a different decision. Establish your own realistic contingency plan. Recognise the limitations in your present home situation, maybe even move while you can. Give your written requests to your family, to your friends. Choose a trustworthy person to hold information for you in emergency. You're lying flaked out, you've got to pay for the bill for this hospital. You give your card to somebody who's going to go and put it in the ATM for you and get out the money you need. And when they do that, they see down the bottom corner how much remains in the account. What a temptation for someone living on 10,000 baht a month to see that available and to know that all the members of their family are in debt. Think of who you want to give your emergency help to. Is it worth considering activating a local expat community self-help system? You remember Lanacarenet, Cancer Care? We had wonderful people who ran with that, but it was one person in the end doing a huge amount, and we no longer have those 2 one-peoples with us. Preparing well promotes better quality of living Palliative care isn't about dying immediately, it's about living with a problem. And preparing well promotes better quality of living to the end of life for you. But you are the one who needs to start taking the steps.
Come on, come on.
Oh.
Heather has not I in no way thought she'd go through all that material.
All right.
So huge appreciation. That was a lot of material covered. Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, without further ado, we're going to go right into living wills. You should all remember Joe from the last session. We'll do the same thing, so I will kind of goose Joe with the questions and we'll go from there.
Good morning. It was really good to hear Heather's talk then. I can tell you that I have never had a client who doesn't speak highly of Doc Cal Gardens and the McCain Hospital. I've had dealings with that organisation many times. And whenever anyone asks me where should I look to get some assisted care in Chiang Mai, the first referral I have is Doc Cal Gardens and McCain Hospital. They are just fabulous. They provide really, really good care at a pretty small cost. On the other hand, there are high care providers who charge huge rates and frankly don't provide the care. I can give you any number of horror stories that I've come across, including one man who was in the final stages of Parkinson's disease. He was meant to be given 24-hour supervised care. Fell over in the gardens. There was a huge red wound on his forehead, was then allowed to go into the swimming pool and effectively drowned but remained alive, unconscious. He went to a very expensive hospital, was sent there by an ambulance, and his two adult children came over to try and care for him. He didn't have a living will, and the hospital would not accept instructions from his two adult children. They were charging 100,000 baht a day to keep him alive when effectively he was dead. We ended up doing negotiations with the hospital, arranged to have him, gave them security for the hospital fees, arranged to have him medevac back to Australia with a doctor and a nurse, and he was turned off there. That's the sort of things you can come across if you don't make the appropriate preparation. Living wills. A living will is not a will. It's what is known in Western countries as an advance care directive or sometimes an enduring guardianship appointment. I don't know why it's called a living will, but that's what it's called. A living will is a document in Thailand, and let me tell you, you can forget about your advance care directive, you can forget about your enduring guardianship appointment. They won't be accepted here in Thailand. So, you know, if you're getting on in age and there's a chance that you might have to go to hospital and you might not be able to give instructions to the hospital, you need a living will. A living will, and I guess it arises from the culture in Thailand where Buddhists don't like to let anyone die, animals, humans, whoever. So typically the doctors won't allow you to die when in effect you're in either palliative care or you need to be in a hospice. They won't do it. A living will overcomes that problem. In 2007, the Thai government passed an amendment to the Health Act which enabled the regulations to be made covering living wills. 4 years later, in 2011, the regulations were put into place. What does a living will do? Well, a living will, first of all, appoints a healthcare representative who can make decisions for you as to your care in hospital in circumstances in which you're in a near-death scenario. A near-death, there's 5 specified types of near-death scenario. The first is if the doctor agrees that you're really dying and keeping you on life support will only prolong the actual moment of your death. If you have severe brain damage, if you are unconscious and unlikely to recover consciousness, if you are in excruciating pain. There's 5 scenarios, and I've never had a client who doesn't accept all 5. A living will has a tick box. They have to initial each instruction, and I have every client I've had who says, yes, I want the living will to come into play if I'm in one of those near-death scenarios.
Joe?
Yes.
I need to confirm for everyone that the last one is extraordinary suffering. I checked with the Thai health minister. And a nagging spouse does not qualify as extraordinary suffering.
Sometimes can. So the living will doesn't come into play until firstly you're in one of those near-death scenarios. 2 medical doctors agree that that's the case, and you're in a position where you can't give instructions to the hospital yourself. In those circumstances, the healthcare representative can then give instructions to the doctor or hospital as to what form of treatment or procedures you want to be undertaken, and the doctor will act on those instructions on the basis that he is indemnified against any other legal liability he might have in acting on the instructions. The healthcare representative doesn't have to make decisions. The healthcare representative's responsibility is to inform the doctor of what your decisions are. What sort of questions? Well, the living will in Thailand is very good. It covers a whole range of procedures where you can say, yes, I want this type of care or procedure or treatment, or no, I don't. We have a whole list of questions covering most of the usual sorts of things that you would expect to find in that near-death scenario, and there's provision to have additional instructions given at the time. What sort of questions are likely to be included in that? Well, if you're in the final stages of death by cancer, stage 4, that's a situation where if you, for example, develop pneumonia, do you want to be treated for the pneumonia? Most people say no. If I'm dying, if I'm just about dead and I develop pneumonia, don't keep me alive by treating pneumonia. Similarly, in the case of a heart attack, if I'm dying, in the final stages of dying, and I develop a heart attack, do I want CPR? Most people say no. If I'm in the final stages of dying, do I want to be kept alive by intravenous feeding, tube feeding? Most people, again, no, I don't want that. Do I want to be kept hydrated? That is, you don't want to die of thirst? Most people say yes, keep me hydrated. They're the sort of questions, but there are also more general questions. Do you want the maximum amount of pain relief permitted by law? Everyone says yes. They're the sort of questions. Do you want to die at home? Well, often you don't have a choice, but the scenario is, if you have a choice, would you prefer to die at home, or would you prefer to die at the hospital? There's different views about that. People tend to say they would like to die at home. It's a fairly long procedure going through those list of questions. A living will is prepared in English and Thai, and in relation to each question, the person who's called a declarant is to initial yes or no in both English and Thai to the answer to the question that they want their healthcare representative to give instructions on. What are the requirements for a living will? It must be in writing, it must be dated, it must be signed by the declarant, it must be witnessed, there must be an appointment of a healthcare representative. You can have one or more if you wish, as alternates or together. If they're together, they've got to come to a decision, so you're probably better off having one person, and that person has to accept appointment. You've then got a valid living will that will protect you in the event that you're in a near-death scenario and you can't communicate instructions to the doctor and you need someone to do so. The good thing about living wills is your healthcare representative doesn't have to make decisions for you. You've already made those decisions. The healthcare representative's job is simply to tell the doctor or the hospital what those decisions you've already made are. That's sort of a brief summary of living wills, and it's all interrelated with hospice care and palliative care. I remember when my father was dying at St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney, and I was with the palliative care specialist, and he said to my dad, "Kevin, we can't make you better, but we can keep you comfortable. Do you understand that?" And he did. And they looked after him. When my dad died, that palliative care specialist rang me on 3 separate occasions to see if my mum was okay, to see if my family were okay, and to see if we needed any help. That's the sort of level of care that you really need to have. That's in a different environment. That's the sort of level of care that places like, well, not places like, pretty well only Dock Howe Gardens provide and McCain Hospital. Heather was correct in saying you need to think about what hospital you're sending your loved one to if you have someone who's in that sort of situation. I'm not going to go through and name hospitals. I can tell you one where I'd be looking at McCain Hospital, but there's quite a number of others that are good choices. People making living wills should make sure that their healthcare representative knows where they want to go. I guess that covers what I wanted to say about living wills. If you have any questions, we can deal with it later today, or we can deal with it next week. The other thing that I was going to cover here was powers of attorney. A power of attorney appoints another person to undertake any legal actions that you're unable or don't wish to undertake yourself. You might be sick, you might be in hospital, you might be in another country. In Thailand, you can have a general appointment as a power of attorney or a limited appointment to have certain things done. A power of attorney must be in writing, it must be dated, it must be signed, it must be witnessed, and any legal document in Thailand must be signed in blue ink. I don't know how that came about. I think it's because they wanted to pick documents that were originals rather than photocopies, but of course that doesn't take into account colour photocopies, so I don't really know why that is. The attorney then can do anything you like. The attorney can make healthcare decisions, but not end-of-life ones if you're having living will, because the living will comes into play if the preconditions are met for that. But the attorney can continue to make healthcare decisions up to the time of your death, other than those matters contained in your living will. The attorney can also make decisions such as operating on your bank account, dealing with financial transactions, signing legal documents. With a general power of attorney, a power of attorney can be just a general power of attorney, or it can be an enduring power of attorney. That is, it will continue if you lose capacity. For it to be an enduring power of attorney in Thailand, the attorney needs to accept appointment, and it operates as an enduring power of attorney from that time. It will operate as a power of attorney generally as soon as you make it and have the document witnessed. In general powers of attorney that I do, I always put additional provisions that this power of attorney includes empowering the attorney to deal with financial and banking transactions, and it also includes the power to make healthcare decisions other than end-of-life decisions covered by a living will. Now, that's really a belt and braces approach, because you go to the bank and you have a general power of attorney and it doesn't talk about banking transactions, the clerk will say, or the manager will say, this doesn't say anything about banking transactions. So if you have it's an important instrument in your weaponry to cover end-of-life decisions. But banks are difficult, as we all know. The person behind the desk makes the decision, and you really don't know what that is likely to be, and 3 different people will make 3 different decisions. So it's a good idea, if you have an enduring power of attorney and you want your attorney to deal with banking and financial transactions, that you go and take a copy of the power of attorney to your bank manager and say, here it is, my attorney can operate my account, will you accept that? I recommend that you do that. That really, we thought it might take more than half an hour, but there's the basic information. I'm happy later to answer any questions in relation to either living wills or powers of attorney. Let's just look at the chronology. Power of attorney. It commenced operation on signing it. It commences as an enduring power of attorney upon the attorney accepting appointment. It continues right up until the living will comes into play, and then it continues further, for example, for financial matters, up until the time of your death. A power of attorney can be revoked at any time. I know when my father was in hospital, in and out, my mum said, can you fix up his banking accounts, they're in a mess, which I did, and he got out of hospital and said, your power of attorney is revoked. He rang me the next morning and said, look, I've thought about that, that's okay. And he did that on a few occasions while he was ill. So if you're going to revoke a power of attorney, an attorney is required to act in your best interest. He she has what's called a fiduciary duty. He or she has got a higher standard of care or duty of care than making decisions for himself. And if the attorney does not act in accordance with his fiduciary duty, his transactions can be set aside. Dealing with the living will comes into play once the preconditions are met, and it continues up until the moment of your death. On your death, both the power of attorney and the living will cease to have any operation, and at that moment your will comes into play. So that's the chronology. They all are done for different reasons, but all part of your overall weaponry in terms of legal issues to care for you during your later years. That pretty well covers what I've got to say.
Awesome. We are on schedule. Yes. Everyone, let's take 10-minute break. Please no more than 10 minutes, so we have lots of time for questions. And we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Great job, Joe. Is there anyone that would volunteer to hold this microphone and carry it out to people who have questions? Oh, we have a winner! Ding, 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 ding. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
I'm going to hand this to you. Heather, it might make sense for you to come up here, because I can't imagine you won't get a question or two. And would you prefer to sit or stand?
Sit.
Okay.
Sit over here.
All right, we are all mic'd up and ready to go. So, who's first?
So all our documents, will, living will, power of attorney, are written in both Thai and English. And so we have a provision in the will that says if there's any difference in interpretation between Thai and English, English will prevail. I've heard that yes, that's accurate, and I've also heard an attorney tell us no, Thai will prevail. So if you have a comment about that, it would really help.
I'm sure Joe will pick that up.
It's valid to have a provision in a contract or a will or any legal document where it's in English and Thai. You can agree that where there's a dispute, English will prevail. Thai law must prevail. You can't enter into a contract or a document, a legal document in Thailand and exclude Thai law. That's illegal. You can have them in both languages, and you can have a provision that English will prevail. I think the Thai lawyer is confusing his advice with what type of law can prevail. I've seen documents, any of the big condos, international condos, typically their documents are in Thai and English, and they always provide, if there's any dispute, that the Thai language is to prevail. That's because English is a much more wide language. It has a much greater vocabulary than Thai. For example, in a will, the word lan can mean grandson, granddaughter, niece, or nephew.
Great question. I've got a couple here. So I've been, one is a news item, and someone said this last week as well, but it's worth repeating. It used to be that Bangkok Hospital would only allow one to use the living will that was their particular form. That has changed, so that's good news. Thank you for whoever reported that. Commentary on medical repatriation. One of our attendees here returned to Canada for several years, and it was required to be there for 3 months before they were eligible for health care. So just make sure, I think the message there is to make sure before you go back to get care in another country to make sure you know how the process works. This one I imagine Joe will know. Can I name my spouse as a beneficiary for my savings of the fixed bank account used to satisfy my visa requirement?
Yes.
And then another person asked me a question, a little background. I was at Bangkok Bank, and the guy sitting next to me, also a Farang with his wife, and was talking about there being, her having access to his account, yes. And then almost as a throwaway line, the bank lady said, but as soon as you die, then she will no longer have access. So the follow-up question to for Joe is, so if do you know, Joe, how the person can allow access to this fixed account after he or she dies?
If the spouse has access to the account and she's also the beneficiary of the account in your will, she's legally and morally entitled to the money. There may be a banking regulation that says that that can't happen, but the banks don't know in Thailand. The banks don't know you've died. Once they know you've died, the account will be frozen.
So do with that information what you will, but that's worth repeating. The bank does not know you've died. Once they find out, they will freeze it. Again,
Do not go and tell them.
Use that information as you will. All right. So again, I think this is probably towards Joe. Regarding the living will, the form originally developed by AtlantiCare.net, is that still valid? Do you know?
Yes, it is. I don't think there's been any. I've seen many of the AtlantiCare.net living wills, and provided they're still applicable in terms of the instructions there, Mum.
Great. This person is my new hero. Look how organized they were. They showed up with a typed question. So I won't call you out and embarrass you, but that's really cool. All right. So what happens if the friend I appoint as my executor predeceases me?
And that does not invalidate the will. The will continues. Someone else who has standing would have to apply to the court for probate or administration.
And that problem also can be obviated if in your will you appoint either a secondary executor or one that would take the place of the first one if they're unwilling or unable.
Yeah, I always use the words unwilling or unable. Don't put death because there might be other reasons.
All right. This one I'm going to answer myself at first, and then Joe can jump on me after that. Can I use the law firm that I choose to write my will to also be my executor? And this came up, I think, last week, and it puts many lawyers, including I think Joe, prefer not to do that or might absolutely just refuse because it puts them in a conflict of interest, right? Because the executor gets paid for their time, and it's up to you, but there are good reasons to have those two things be separate. Do you have another thought?
In the law firms that I have worked in, we have always had a general principle that we don't accept appointment as executors. There are exceptions to that, of course. You know, a little old lady who says, I have no one, Mr. Lynch, can you help me? I will generally do that, but it doesn't put you in an immediate potential conflict of interest. Worse still, some law firms will say, not only are they executor, but I direct that firm act for my estate. Extraordinary.
Yep, that's just giving someone a kind of a blank check. So this one's a little trickier. So it's regarding pain meds, and the observation is that Thai doctors can be quite reluctant to give pain medication, as I guess liberally is not the right word, but as much as is medically necessary to alleviate pain. And so one question is McCain any different? Will they administer that? Since you are right here, we'll let's sit. Just McCain pain meds.
Normally, if someone comes to McCain, perhaps with cancer, and we're giving them palliative care, hospice care, the order for medication comes from their specialist, from the person who has looked after the cancer. And we give the medication, but the specialist is the one who has ordered it. Most ordinary doctors can't just give very strong medications like that. And often a doctor, a specialist, won't entrust those strong medications to a nurse in the home because they're very limited. Only a few people have access to them, and they're very dangerous, and the doctor would stand to be blamed if a nurse or a family member misused the medication. So normally, the very strong things like morphine are under the order of the cancer specialist or the specialist, but may be given by trusted carers. Holly, I'm right in that.
Thank you. Okay, that is the written questions. Other than if anyone recognizes this note, could you please hold your hand up and ask it, because I'm sorry I cannot decipher your writing. Oh. All right, while we go through that, who's got a next question?
What about the announced PowerPoints last time?
That one I got. It's this part. Oh, okay, the announced. All right. A question was asked about the promised handouts. Who from PIAP is in the room right now? Oh, Colleen. So I had a couple people say they never got the presentations, and they were sent to you guys a week ago today. So, and Easy problem to fix.
Yeah. Did you already send the second one?
Yes.
Okay, because
Yes.
she did not receive the second.
All right.
Once we receive them, they will be sent out.
Gotcha. Okay, and then there'll be another one that will go out, in other words, today's, will go out today or tomorrow.
Got nothing at all.
Okay, are you a PIAT signee or an expat club signee? Who'd you sign up through?
Can't remember, was that PALLIATIve, I think.
Okay.
PALLIATIve.
Suzanne Pitcher.
I would like to ask the question. I looked at my power of attorney, no, living will, I'm sorry, my living will that I had made here with Mr. Lynch. Thank you. You can all hear me though? No.
So that'll be dodgy.
I was looking at it and I found that my documentation and the documentation of the person who's going to execute this living will, or be the, what do you call it, representative, has expired. Do I need to give Lana lawyers new identity? Do I have to bring it up to date? I've changed my passport, and so has the person too, which is the identification for this living will.
Suzanne, you say, when you say expired, you don't mean died, you mean their passport number's out of date?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
no problem.
Okay,
It's
so
still valid.
still good. In the back.
The question is for Joe, I guess. We were talking earlier about the doctors being reluctant to do certain things. In your experience, has there ever been any kind of hold harmless agreements that have been signed between a patient and a hospital?
Did you hear the question, Joe?
No.
The question is, since some doctors are reluctant to follow the instructions, the question is, can you have a separate kind of hold harmless or indemnification? And I think your answer is you don't need that if you've got the living will, because that provides it.
If you've got a living will, the doctor, in acting on those instructions, is indemnified against any legal liability he would otherwise have. I guess that doesn't mean he has to act on the instructions. If he won't, I'd find another doctor.
Does that answer your question? Sort of. Well, so it is in the legal code that the Thai living will does provide that indemnification. So from a legal standpoint, you're covered. And I guess what Joe's saying is, if even with that, the particular doctor isn't going to follow the wishes expressed in the legally binding document, then it's time to get a new doctor.
The Thai regulations and legislation generally, when translated into English, is not always as tight as one might like.
Next, Dave in the back row.
I think part of his question, and definitely my question, is you said that a physician was reluctant to delegate the application of pain meds because they might be held liable. I think the last question was, can you indemnify the doctor against that so he's no longer afraid that he's going to be prosecuted, and that your caregiver can give you the maximum allowable dose by law?
In every living will I've done, the instruction is to give the maximum amount of pain relief permitted by law. If the doctor acts on that, by statute, he's indemnified against any liability.
In other words, there's no need for an additional indemnification legally. Again, that doesn't mean he's not, he's going to do it, but again, then it may be time to find a new doctor. Next question, yes?
Regarding the gal, when you see the time coming, do you need to get on a, regarding gal, when you see the time coming, do you need to get on a wait list? Because back in California, when it was time, you could be on a wait list for years. There was so little capacity.
You can sit.
When
the new provisions come into the society very quickly. We do interview people and we keep their names, but we don't actually put them on a 1, 2, 3, 4 wait list because we don't know what the problem is going to be at the time they're going to seek admission. And there are some conditions we wouldn't accept people for admission. So it's not a matter of lining up and you've got a right to come in to live in housing. But we have to look at what is your problem, what are your needs, can we meet them? And maybe there'll be some that we can't meet and you really need to be under high care in a tertiary hospital or something like that. So everything depends on a case-by-case situation. But it's certainly good to come and talk in advance so that we've got you on the list. And my wonderful colleague, Holly Denny, is here, the lady in charge of Doggow at the moment, and she's happy to talk with you. But there always needs to be a mutual agreement before anyone comes in, because we might be not right for you, or you, if you have certain problems, may not be right for our home. Well, I've got the mic, I might make another comment. I didn't pick up on Joe saying it, but maybe I missed it. One of the things I read in the Thai law when it was written was that if you have a living will, it says no resuscitation, no everything else. But when you have your accident or your stroke, you're taken to a hospital somewhere and all the bells and smells are started and you're put onto drips and put onto medication, etc., etc. The Thai law that I read said, so your living will should state who has the right to stop that medication. So it's an extra layer. You said you don't want it, but the hospital's already given it. So the living will must say who has the right to stop anything that's already been given against your will. And I picked up on that from the Thai copy of the law, and I'm not sure it was completely covered in what Joe said or not.
No, it wasn't. I rely on a translation of the regulation from a lawyer, Sebastian Brusso, lawyers gave me. Translations aren't always perfect, but that's a point that maybe should be considered in making a living will.
Good point, thank you. Yes?
When you sign your living will, do you have to be certified sound of mind? And by whom?
By whom? I like that one.
You have to have capacity. I regard myself as being reasonably competent in picking up if someone hasn't got capacity, and if I ever have a suspicion to that effect, I want a doctor's letter confirming.
All right, did everybody get that? Okay, next.
I just would like to have a question concerning this.
If your partner is not being able anymore to sign for a living will, how can we then do it? Can the wife sign for him? If the wife is capable to do it, but the husband can't sign anymore because of dementia or...
Well, I think that depends. Sign to accomplish what?
The living will. I talk about the living will. What to be treated, etc. What you wrote there.
So I think if so you're saying if your spouse does not today have a living will, or if they do?
He doesn't have a living will at this moment.
And is not.
And he can't sign anymore nor read anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, if he doesn't have capacity, I've found situations where hospitals will accept instructions from a legal spouse. That is not someone who's just living with someone, but a married spouse. I've struck hospitals. I'd suggest, indeed I've been asked to look at that one. I'd suggest that you have
It's
this
the
off.
Supreme Court calling.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I know that some hospitals will accept instructions from a spouse, a married spouse.
I'm still not clear as to whether you need a will in Australia and in Thailand. Most of my assets are in Australia, but I do have bank accounts, namely the visa amount, retirement visa amount that we have to have. That's the main question. The second question.
And remember, we're all seniors here, so let's do one at a time so we can remember them, all right? Joe, the first question.
It's often a good idea to have wills in separate jurisdictions. However, a will in Australia made by an Australian citizen in accordance with Australian law under the Thai Conflict of Laws Act is a valid will in Thailand, provided it's expressed to cover all assets wherever located. I always like to have a look at the foreign will first to make a decision as to whether there should be a Thai will, and I'm happy to do that free of charge.
All right, so I'm going to repeat the question there because somebody or some people weren't able to hear it. So the question has come up again: if I have a will in another country, do I still need a will in Thailand? And so if you heard Joe's question, as long as the will is valid and effectively and it specifically covers your assets in Thailand, you may not need one. And Joe has said that he would advise that an attorney here look at it to make sure that's the case, and that in his case he would do that review for free. Second question.
Can the beneficiary be the executor of your will?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one.
Can the beneficiary of your will be the same person as the executor?
Generally speaking, not a good idea. Well, no. Yes, your answer is yes. But that person shouldn't be witnessing a will.
Oh, not witnessing the executive.
No, it's common, husband and wife, it's common to have your wife as executor and beneficiary.
Yep. Yeah, the trickier part, as Joe alluded to, is in terms of the witnesses. So there are some very strict rules on who can be witnesses, and your attorney will fill you in on that. Okay, who's next? Yes, sir.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, just a quick point. I would check very well. Just a
Not well enough. Put it up there. There you go.
I am an occupational therapist, or was an occupational therapist, and one of the things that I did an awful lot of was hospital discharges. And in Australia, in the UK, and or in America as well, when you get discharged from hospital, they make sure that you're okay and everything is prepared for your arrival. Here I had 2 requests to help, and in both cases the person had been discharged to home with no support or any arrangements made. And these are simple things like going to the toilet and the shower and so on. And I would like to point out that if you can't walk, you can't use a squat toilet. Now, is there any service here being provided by the organisation of the first speaker? And I'm sorry, my mind's not playing. Heather, sorry. Is there any provision being made here to provide that type of service? I'd like to point out that I have an enormous caseload previously.
I think all the things I said earlier apply in this case. You can get caregivers someone can get you a caregiver to help you at home, but it's got to be the sort of person that can cope with that individual problem. McCain has respite care or recovery care for some people coming out of hospital, but it is very common for some of the big hospitals to discharge someone at about 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. And I don't know why, but we have people suddenly on our doorstep at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. So, but everything I said about being prepared, hiring people to help at home, looking for groups of nurses, all applies for when you're discharged from hospital or coming short-term to a care centre of some kind or a nursing home. But you have to do it. You have to do it. The hospital doesn't do it. They tell you you'll be discharged. They may ask where you're going.
Next, Suzanne.
Does McCain have a rehabilitation centre?
Does McCain have a rehabilitation center?
McCain changed its name 4 or 5 times over the last 115 years, and it was a rehabilitation centre. We still do rehabilitation. We've got occupational therapy, physical therapy, wonderful therapists, which people can go to for outpatient or inpatient care. They can live with us and go there for treatment. So yes, it still does rehabilitation, but it isn't now called a rehabilitation centre.
Roger.
If part of your plan is to return to your home country, could someone talk about the Fit to Fly letter and how that may impact your plans?
Is that something new about?
I think that's why I suggested to make a timely decision to go back while you are still independent. If you are already affected by disease and disability, you will need very likely, especially if you need a caregiver, or if you're asking for wheelchair help, and they're very good with wheelchair help, but often that will make people say, what's he got, what can he do, what can't he do? They may then ask for a fit to fly letter, and you have to have a doctor who knows the condition of the person to say, yes, they're fit to fly, they're not going to die midway, they can get themselves to the toilet, whatever. But that fit to fly letter tends to be asked for if there's already some sort of question that the person needs extra care along the way.
In the back, with the gray hat.
So how does a person get into McCain? Suppose they're at rounds and they're not responding and they're going to die. What happens to get taken to?
The question is, let's say you're at a hospital, he used Ram as the example, and now you want to go to McCain. What is that procedure to get from the hospital to McCain?
You need to contact McCain and make sure, or whatever the other hospital is, to make sure McCain is willing to accept you. Then you talk to the doctor at Ram. Normally, if you're asking for a transfer, McCain would ask for permission to talk to the nurses on your ward, so that we understand what exactly it is that you need. Are we capable of doing it well? And then we work out, if we've agreed, we work out between the 2 hospitals whether it's their car that sends you or whether it's our car that goes to get you. But it's very common to have transfers from one hospital to us or somebody else for extra time care needs. But usually nurse to nurse or doctor to doctor will talk first to make sure what you've got and you need in that hospital we can provide in ours.
Thank you.
I have a question. You talked a lot about the palliative care, but with the hospice care, you've got a landlord that absolutely doesn't want you dying in his house. So can you come, is McCain a possibility for that? And who would arrange that? Is that like a family thing?
Yes, the same thing. You apply to the hospital, to McCain. We would decide whether you needed to be in the hospital itself at McCain for hospice care or whether it could be done in Dockow. Just depends on your needs. But yes, very frequently something can't be done at home, and so the family, the friends, you contact us or contact the other place, and then the arrangements are made, and we can come and pick you up.
And so you don't have to go through a doctor or a hospital, family can just contact you directly, is that correct?
You can't just take them directly, you contact the hospital in advance. Again, we have to know that the person who's coming is someone we can look after their best interests. But if they've got a special need which is outside of what we can look after well, we would have to say, you really should go somewhere else because we can't do that. I can't think what it would be at this moment, but we always have to assess if we are the place you should come to for your best interest.
I have one more. Does anybody like the Expat Club or somebody maintain a list of nurses you can call and care facilities, like a list of that kind of thing?
We don't today have that. One of the things that we discussed, or that I brought up each of the last couple weeks, is to ask you folks to be thinking if you'd like to create a kind of a group that gets together periodically and talks about issues like this and shares resources. And I personally, I think that's a great idea. I'm absolutely going to suggest it. And again, it'll be us managing the group. So, do we meet once a month, twice a month? I don't know. But I think that's a great place to start to establish kind of one of my favorite terms is a resource guide. So that the things you need, where to go, sharing the information. That's one of the real strengths of this group of us as expats, is that we tend to really be happy to help each other and support each other. And when we learn something, we are happy to share it. So I think that's a great idea, and that's a great venue to do it, I think.
Just a word of warning, again, one size doesn't fit all. And someone who's the perfect caregiver for someone who's lying in bed, it may not be the best person for someone who's got dementia, walking a lot, needing things done for them, needing access to a car to go to the bank, to go to get medicines, etc. So just a general data bank I'm a bit worried about. I think it needs to be a little bit more specific. And do you need trained nurses or just a caregiver? I think there's a cleaning company that's also willing to look for people to help you at home. But that will not be someone trained in medical care necessarily. So again, one size doesn't fit all, and be very careful about a database thinking that every name on the base would be the same.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. It is noon. I'm just going to remind you of if you're interested in coming to the bonus Q&A session next week, it would help us a lot if you'd sign the sign-up sheet outside. And if anyone needs to leave, go ahead. Maybe we'll take a couple more questions if anyone's got them. I guess that's it. You guys are such a fabulous audience. Thank you so much for coming. This has been terrific, and we'll see you next week.